Week 9 is here, and so are we. Welcome, everybody, back to the DFS Dudes, the podcast with all your daily fantasy football advice. We are your hosts, Sam Corcoran, Jake Hart, Julian Sherman down below. Guys, how are we doing? I know we had a very hot start last week. Jake, how did that finish up for us?
Yeah, it was fine. It cashed, but with how good the running backs were all around last week, us picking, I think what it was Henry and
We picked
someone else,
Kamara, didn't we? Or did we? We
Kamara.
talked about Kamara at least.
Yeah, I don't know, but it was just like if you missed on one or two players, you weren't cashing in tournaments. It was brutal last week. And it's like I don't know. I had a lot of lineups that did end up cashing, and I mean, I can look at those. It's just like no one, if you didn't have an absolutely perfect lineup, like my best lineup had, I think it was 200 points on the dot, and it was Kyler, Pollard, Deonta Foreman, D Hop, Jettis, DJ Moore. Like, I mean, it had five or six players with 30 points, and it made barely the cash line. Like, it was just that was how stingy this week was. I think the winner ended up having like, I want to say 280. Yeah, 272, which is, I mean, that's pretty insane. So it was really about picking the lowest possible running backs out of the ones that hit. Like if you had Henry, you probably weren't accessing one of those other guys unless you snuck in a Deonta Foreman. And then Tyreek Waddle Tua, which we had a bit of, but not the whole thing. And we talked about how you could have all of them, but you really need to get the rest of your lineup perfect.
You do. And I go ahead, Julian. Did I cut you off?
No, I was just gonna say like the chalk hit. Like when the chalk hits like that, it's like you kind of got to be perfect up and down your lineup. But then chalk kind of busts, you can really get away with like 205, 210 points and win it all because it's just these guys that are like 30% owned, 25% owned just don't hit. But now it was just like fucking DJ Moore had like that 80-yard touchdown to like really just put him over like 30 fantasy points or something. Derrick Henry, Alvin Kamara, all those guys should just smash. And so you look at your line like, oh, I put up 210 points, but like the winner was like 247 or something crazy, 237. So you just got to be perfect up and down that lineup, and it's really fucking hard to do that.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, it was interesting to see like not a lot of the lower priced quarterbacks ended up hitting. I think Justin Fields was just about the only one, which makes the variation plays like that week that Joe Flacco and Garrett Wilson went off. At least you could kind of get away from what was considered like the perfect stack or the stack that you want to have every week. You can get away to some other options. You really couldn't if you didn't have Kyler or Tua and I guess Justin Fields and Jalen Hurts. Again, what great play, Jalen Hurts, but he was so expensive, and that A.J. Brown stack was so expensive that you weren't getting the running backs that you needed.
Exactly. Yeah, a lot of high-priced guys hit. It was we kind of talked about it last week, guys. It was there was a lot of guys you could have chosen. And a lot of those guys that we talked about hit. It just depended on which guy was it because there were so many guys that hit. You weren't going to do anything unless you had the guy. So it makes sense. And for myself, I did cash a little bit with my lineup, but my personal lineup, I should say. But overall, it wasn't that big because other teams cashed more, and because they had all the guys that you needed. Where I had a few guys that didn't do too well, and it just didn't work out. But let's hope we have some better luck this week. It's going to be an interesting week, guys. You can't for just to start this off. The trade deadline today was crazy. We were talking about that before we hit the record button, but it's going to be interesting, I should say, to see how many people are going to use the guys that someone is got. So their team acquired someone that could take their place. So, or they traded someone away. So like Raheem Mostert, Chase Edmonds gone. I know they brought in Jeff Wilson. So you never know with that. You also have Darnell Mooney. I don't know how many people are going to start him. You can't start any guy that got traded today, but it'll be interesting to see what happens. So let's start it off with the quarterbacks. And for me, I'm really looking at, again, I feel like we've had a common theme of looking at some games that we might like to have in our lineup. One game that stands out: Seattle, Arizona. Geno Smith at 5,800 is a really good play in my opinion this week. The Seahawks are a team that has been doing very well recently. I believe they won last week. Yes, they won last week. So that you have the 5-3 Seahawks, which feels really weird to say. Going up against a Cardinals offense that struggled at points, but they have that firepower in them. Also, another game to look at. Scrolling down if I can find it real quick. I mean, that's really the main game. Seattle, Arizona is a big game. Buffalo, New York could be a solid game, although I think Buffalo will control the tempo in that game. New York's offense has been a bit shaky, but you never know. Green Bay, Detroit, both offenses have been so. I know Detroit, that's a game we've always highlighted, whatever Detroit game it is, because I feel like those games are always boom or bust. Packers, I'm a bit shaky, and Aaron Rodgers for 5,900 could be a fantastic deal as well. The Lions defense, especially their secondary, they fired their secondary coach. I believe it was today or yesterday. That could be a great deal right there. Jared Goff only at bit cheaper at 5,500. So mainly those two games. Seattle, Arizona is my favorite game. If I had to pick a number two, it would be Green Bay, Detroit.
Yeah, I mean, hearing what you said, I do like Seattle, Arizona, but I'm staying away from Geno Smith. If you look at his stats, his fantasy points hit a big drop off at week 6, and uncoincidentally, that's when Kenneth Walker took over the backfield role. He's taking a lot of the touches, and especially the red zone touches, and he's taking them to the end zone. So Geno Smith just isn't getting that same opportunity that he had at the beginning of the season to throw the ball on every down and get those 4 or 5 touchdown games that you kind of need from a guy who's not going to get you the rushing yards. The guys that I like down low, you mentioned the guys up high. Josh Allen, 8,500, still probably a good value because you're going to get 25, 30 points. Tua, 6.7. I think it's an expensive stack, but I do like that game. I think Fields on the other side at 5.3 is probably more attractive to me because of his rushing upside. You don't need to stack with more than one guy, and then you even have enough money to run it back with Hill and Waddle, which we've seen be a very viable position pretty much every time Tua comes out there. So I've been liking that, like Fields, and then pick a receiver like Mooney, or if you're more on like a cheap St. Brown or Cole Kmet or something, just someone who could get into the end zone 1 or 2 times randomly. And then the other guy, Trevor Lawrence. The Raiders are just unwatchable, especially their defense. And they are far and away the best matchup. You've got Trevor Lawrence. They pass the ball a lot. Etienne is a great receiving back. He can make stuff happen. I mean, we saw Kamara last week. I think he had 2 receiving touchdowns. Or tell me if I'm wrong on that. I believe that's right.
You meant Etienne, right? Not Kamara.
Well, Kamara last week against the Raiders.
Oh, against the Raiders. I'm sorry. Yeah. Okay, my bad.
So that would have been the play over. I had a lot of Olave and Dalton, which didn't kill me because it was so cheap, but he didn't get into the end zone, which that was a big drawback. But I do like Lawrence, Christian Kirk, that whole stack, not too expensive. They've been struggling in weeks past. So I think it's going to be somewhat low owned, even though they have such a great matchup.
Yeah, I think I actually do like Geno Smith this week. I understand that like Kenneth Walker coming in, but he's also he's priced at 5,800, and so like touchdowns are so variant, and I think it could Kenneth Walker could get another 2 scores, and Geno Smith doesn't get in the end zone as much, right? He only gets like 1 touchdown. He's only 5,800, and for me, I think you would just game stack that. And you could have Geno and Kenneth Walker in the same line if you just want to go onslaught of Seattle versus Arizona and hope that game just blows up. I mean, I know it didn't last time, but I game stacked the last time it didn't work out. But I do like Geno. You also brought up Josh Allen. I really like Josh Allen this week going against the Jets. I understand that he's 8,500, but he's easy to pair. Right? You could go. It is an expensive stack, right? Because you have to go with, all right, let's go Stephon Diggs. He's expensive, right? It's hard to do Josh Allen without Diggs and just go Josh Allen with Gabriel Davis. I mean, you can, but that's just tough. And for me, I think one of the guys that you haven't talked about is Marcus Mariota at 5,300 going against the Chargers. I think they're going to pass the ball a lot. And I think that going against Justin Herbert, I don't really like Mariota. Like I don't know how great of a quarterback he actually is, but he has a lot of rushing upside, right? He'll get you like 30, 40 yards on the ground. I don't think he's priced up nearly enough. And you compare him with whomever on that offense, Kyle Pitts, whatever, the rookie wide receiver, I forget his name. Who's the rookie?
Drake
London.
Drake London, right? And so easy to bring it back with a guy like Mike Williams or something like that, or Austin Eckler. He could easily get there as well.
Yeah, I mean, Mike Williams is out too, so Josh
Mike
Palmer.
Williams is out. Oh yeah, he's out for what? Like
yes, he is ruled out. Yes.
Right? Yeah. No, yeah. So there, the targets are a lot less spread out for the Chargers, and so those are really the three main guys I'm going with, and I just like the Seattle, Arizona, both Kyler and Gino. We want to game stack that.
Yeah, speaking to Josh Allen, because I know I brushed over it, Julian, you said that a bit, but like I was kind of worried about playing the Jets. They had been so reliant on the running game and Breece Hall. I was kind of scared that now, and maybe I'm wrong, with James Robinson becoming more integrated, that they were still just going to run the ball because they're going to be down to the Bills. It's the Bills. They're going to be losing, so we need them to pass it. And they showed that they did last week. I think they only had what, Michael Carter, 7 rushing attempts, 5 for James Robinson, and 2 for Ty Johnson, which is so small. I mean, Zach Wilson passed 41 times, 350 yards. I mean, that's something. Running Garrett Wilson out there as a bring back is pretty cheap, and you get that full game that could go into the 60s if the Jets put up somewhat of a fight, if they can get in the end zone 2 or 3 times. So that Josh Allen is a lot more attractive than I think people will think it is, because he has that whatever red opposition rank matchup, as well as maybe a team that they don't think is going to put up much of a fight.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Totally. Let's move on to running back. Lots of quarterbacks to choose from. Jake, you mentioned Trevor Lawrence. Do you stack him with ETN, or do you play ETN alone this week? I know we were talking about him a bit before at 6,300.
I think you absolutely can. I know ETN, we were literally just talking about this before, because Julian proposed me a trade where I would get ETN in our regular league. And ETN, he's a receiving back. That's what he was known for. And he still hasn't had more than 3 catches in a game. And I think that's more showing what's going to come. He still has growth. If he gets into the end zone, I think he's a lock for 20 points this week. Like, I just think he's really good. They're going to give him the carries. The Raiders defense, awful, like I said.
Yeah.
So if he is someone who's pretty active in the receiving game, then I like that. You're relying a lot on that game being big, and the Raiders options for the stack are not great, because you either have to go DA, who's over 8K, or Renfro, who got almost nothing, and Hollins, who's pretty hit or miss. So maybe I just do like a skinny stack with Lawrence and Kirk, or Lawrence and ETN, or Lawrence and Engram, if you want to access some of the more expensive other options. But around ETN, I really this week I don't find any cheap running backs that I'm really in love with. Maybe Deion Jackson if Jonathan Taylor ends up being out. But other than that, I mean, I really like Kenneth Walker. 6.2 is about as cheap as I'm getting. Joe Mixon, 6.5. I really like. He's gonna have a big Joe Mixon game where they get up at some point. Again, I think it's this week. I think they're gonna get up big. They don't have Jamar Chase. And then they're gonna pound the rock with Joe Mixon. He's very active in the passing game. If he gets into the end zone twice, he is the play that you want to have, and he's so priced down because he's not had very many good weeks. He hasn't ended up in the end zone a lot. Other than him, I like Eckler for the reasons we already said. Mike Williams is out. There are so few running backs who, if they get 10 targets, you're just like, oh yeah, that makes sense. Maybe even none. It might just be CMC and Eckler at this point, so that is so rare. The only other one I had, Aaron Jones. They're leaning on him a lot at this point, and they're playing a horrible Lions defense. So I think it just makes sense. He's a little expensive for my taste at 7.4. I might just go up to Eckler at that point, get the more guaranteed points, but I think he is going to be much less owned.
Yeah, I actually I was just going to say, I agree with the Mixon take a lot. 6,500 is a fantastic play. Again, Jake, you said a game that they're going to get up in. And I also I completely agree with your thoughts on the Lawrence Etienne stack. And looking back at it, 5,200 for Lawrence, 6,300 for Etienne. That's a bargain right there, in my opinion. That's all I want to say. I'll let Julian talk, but I just want to throw that out.
Yeah, I think for me, I think my two favorite plays when it comes to running backs are Kenneth Walker and Joe Mixon. By a wide margin, I think first is Kenneth Walker, then Joe Mixon because of the pricing here. Kenneth Walker at 6,200. It's just too low for a workhorse running back in a matchup that I love this game in general. I don't care if it's Lockett or Metcalf or Kenneth Walker or Geno Smith. I love that offense right there. And so for me, I think that Kenneth Walker, if you want to go Kenneth Walker, you can still go with Geno Smith. They can still both get there for sure if that game just blows up. And Joe Mixon is 6,500. He's still the workhorse. I still think that's a solid offense. And I think when you're going against, Carolina has a all right defense, but I don't really care about the matchup matters, but it's really more about, all right, is he going to get the carries? Is he going to get passing yards? And he is because he's the workhorse and he's only 6,500. But one of the guys that I don't think he's not a great play in general, but I think DeAndre Swift, I don't know if he's back or not. Who knows? But he's right. You go right above him, it's Joe Mixon. He's going to be chalk. Go right below him, it's Travis Etienne. He's going to be chalk. No one's going to be on DeAndre Swift. And who knows? Maybe Jamal Williams now takes a backseat and he's the workhorse again. 17 carries, gets 7 targets, and he could easily just go off for 22, 23. Are we really surprised if Swift ends up with 23 fantasy points? No, we're not. The other two could bust. And I probably wouldn't do that in a cash game lineup, right? That's just kind of that's too variant for me. But in GPPs, you kind of want to embrace the variance and understand, okay, could DeAndre Swift go for 23, 24? Would we be surprised? No. He's talented. That's a good offense. They're going to be passing the ball, and he gets – if they pass the ball 30 times, he'll probably get 5 or 6 targets easily. You could see that. And so Swift is someone that I'm targeting just in GPPs, not really anything else. And if we're going to talk about paying up, I do like Austin Eckler, even though he's 8,800 going against Atlanta. Super expensive, but I like him better than Cook, Taylor, and Aaron Jones. And then obviously Josh Jacobs. He had one down week, but he's still a stud.
Yeah, your guy, Josh Jacobs, going off every week. Yeah, I like the Eckler pick too, I have to say. I think it's expensive. You're going to have to find cheap receivers. And let's talk about some receivers that could work out. Julian, I'll start with you. Do you have any cheap receivers in mind? We'll talk about the pricey ones later. I want to hear some cheap ones from you, though.
Yeah, so I think when it comes to really dirt cheap, if we're gonna think 4Ks, there are a couple of them. I like Zay Jones and I like Drake London. Drake London, really, he's been off, right? And I think the talent is there, and I think Marcus Mariota, I like him this week, and so I think I'm gonna like you like Drake London. Marcus Mariota played well. It just didn't go to London. It went to Demir Bird and Kyle Pitts. And so next week, why can't it go to Drake London? Especially when it's 4,900. It's really, if you want to go with Marcus Mariota, Drake London, Kyle Pitts, hope that works out. I mean, you're saving a lot of money with a cheap wide receiver and a cheap quarterback, right? And you got your tight end spot filled, which is always a terrible spot. And so for me, I think Drake London, if we're going to pay down, also Zay Jones going against Las Vegas. I mean, I think the Las Vegas, like you were talking, you like Trevor Lawrence, you like Travis Etienne. Why can't you like Zay Jones at 4,100? For sure, he can do well, right? And so for me, I think he's not the one there. But when you got a guy at 4,100, you're really not looking for much. You're just looking for a salary saver, especially if hey, I want to pay up for Josh Allen, Stephon Diggs, right? That's the stack I'm going with. Well, then you have to pay down, and why can't you go London and Zay Jones? Just play them as one-offs. That's probably fine. And so for paying down, those are really my two guys. And this isn't really paying down, but Tyler Lockett at 6,100 is just – I know it's for obvious reasons because I like that game. So talking about paying down, those are really the two guys that I would go with. And Lockett's more with mid-range.
Yeah. paying down, there aren't a ton of guys that I like, but there are mid to low range. The absolute bottom one, Terrace Marshall Jr., 3.9. If you watched that game, which I watched basically the whole second half of that game because I just thought it was so entertaining, he got so many red zone targets. Like every time it would just be him one-on-one and it would be a fade. And I think one of them, he caught at least one where he didn't get the feed in. And he had a few where it was just, it looked like he was overwhelmed. Honestly, I'm pretty sure he was just avoiding the AJ Terrell on DJ Moore. But that's what you want. And at 3.9K, what the hell? Do a flyer, like throw him into one of your lineups. If he fits, he's just so much a better option because he'll get looks. He's part of the offense rather than someone else at 3.9 who is just some fourth receiver on a good offense who maybe he gets a 60-yard touchdown, A little up, Darnell Mooney, 4.7. I really like that game. I think it's almost a carbon copy of the Cowboys Bears matchup from last week, where you have an offense with multiple weapons, a good offense, somewhat of a good defense coming in, and the Bears and Justin Fields having a really good game. He looked really good. He did in that game. And even though they didn't end up winning or I don't think they were even that close. I think they lost by more than 2 touchdowns. It was still really good for fantasy. And because of what he can provide with his legs, he can be an instant play, just like Solo. But also I like Mooney at 4.7 being the number 1 receiver. He has not gotten into the end zone yet. There will be some touchdown regression to the mean. He's probably, he's not going to end the season with 0 touchdowns is what I'm saying. If he stays healthy, he'll get touchdowns. And why not this week? He's playing Miami. They're probably going to, Miami's offense moves so quick. They're going to get the ball a lot. So I really like Mooney. And then Palmer, we talked about the Chargers. I think he got, before the bye, he was coming off like a 10-target game or something like that when Mike Williams went down. Mike Williams went down at the end, but Keenan wasn't in the game. So he's kind of established himself as the third and almost a handcuff when someone else goes out. And I like it even more with Mike Williams out instead of Keenan Allen because I think he is more of that big body Mike Williams type presence rather than a possession receiver like Keenan Allen. So yeah, those are some guys that I like. There's a few more. Romeo Dobbs, 5.3. Again, you're just betting on who Rodgers is going to throw the touchdown to. Christian Kirk, for the same reasons that Julian said for Zay Jones. I really like him. So those are the 5.5 and below receivers I like.
Yeah, Zay Jones, that's the guy I've been looking at really for the below 4,100. It also allows you to just get some flexibility for those expensive guys. And I'll tell you guys, my other receivers with Zay Jones that are in my lineup right now are all 6,400 and above. I could change it up, but I think this is a very good week to have a Miami stack at receiver with Waddle and Tyreek Hill. And reason being is those guys are going to be low owned. You see the opponent rank in the red, number 3. So low owned. If you want to get some guys, if they hit, they're going to be low owned. It could work out very well from you. I think stacking those two is not a bad idea. The offense is explosive in Miami. They made some deadline deals, got another running back. I know that doesn't really apply, but they're all in with Tua. And I think using these two guys, stacking them is a good idea. I also mentioned the Seattle game, Seattle, Arizona. So I'm going to throw DK Metcalf in there. It's always a toss-up between Metcalf and Lockett. Metcalf has got more targets than Lockett, if I'm not mistaken. Let me just double check that real quick. Tyler Lockett has, yes. So actually, I think they have the same amount of targets. No, Metcalf has 1 extra target. He's a bit more expensive at 6,100. So I could go Lockett too, actually. That might be the better move, going Tyler Lockett instead of DK Metcalf. So we'll do that instead. And you get 3 guys over 6,100 in your lineup if you can fit a guy like Zay Jones in.
Yeah, the one thing that I'll say that I didn't really bring up during the Kyler talk or the Geno Smith talk is the last time they played, they scored 28 points in total in the whole game. DK Metcalf had 2 for 34. Tyler Lockett had 2 for 17. And I'm not saying that's going to happen again, but that has to be in the range of outcomes that is just not, in my opinion, it's not there for a guy like Trevor Lawrence. I think there's just no way that the Raiders offense isn't letting him into the end zone multiple times. And even with, like, if you're talking about Tua, there's just no way that that Bears defense is stopping him. Where, I mean, you're talking about divisional matchups, Seattle, Arizona. Arizona has been very good against wide receivers randomly, like just the number one wide receiver. And so I don't trust it enough to want to do like a Geno DK stack, just because, like, yeah, it's cheap, but it's not that cheap. What, DK's in the
Yeah.
6Ks, Geno's almost at 6K. I mean, when you're talking cheap, I think Fields and Lawrence are just the way to go, or otherwise
And
I'd rather go up farther.
Yeah, and I actually completely agree with you right there. I'm actually going to go with a Lawrence ETN stack. I mentioned Geno just for individual quarterbacks, but when you talk about stacks, I think the Lawrence ETN stack, so much more upside, such a cheaper price. I'd much rather go that. I think DK individually or Tyler Lockett individually could work. Bit of a risky move, but if that hits, then you're gonna be in good position.
Yeah, but the thing with individually, like if DK hits, do we really see it a way that Geno does not hit? I mean, obviously DK get in the end zone a couple times. Geno doesn't do very well, but I mean, if for me, I'm either gonna go onto that game heavy, or I'm just gonna be like, I don't want to touch. I'm not gonna go with DeAndre Hopkins. I'm not going Tyler Lockett because easily that game it could bust. It busted last time, but for me, I think I'm not going to play him as a one-offs like you would. Like you can do whatever you want, right? In tournaments, do whatever. But for me, I think I'm either just going to go onslaught and really just stack it, or I'm just not going to go with any of the pieces.
I think the only receiver that I somewhat disagree with, I think DeAndre Hopkins can definitely be played as a one-off, just because
definitely
is such the possession receiver type that I could see Kyler passing for 250 yards and not necessarily getting the end zone, and then DeAndre Hopkins comes down 13 balls for 90 yards or something.
No, you can for sure. You can play DeAndre Hopkins as a one-off. That's the player that I think you can. It's just for me.
I agree. I agree with DK and Lockett, though. I just think they're definitely two. I mean, they're both downfield targets. Neither of them are gonna have a 10 catch for 100-yard game. It's just not. That's just not who they are. That's not who that offense is. They like to get. They run the ball on early downs. They get short down and distance, and then they go deep. And you just kind of got to hope that Lockett or DK comes down with multiple touchdowns if you're picking between them. So I understand it, but I don't think that I'm going to have many lineups with it.
Fair enough. Yeah. I think I just want a little bit of something in that game. I can afford them, so might as well stick it in. I know it's a little bit of a risk, but I'm willing to take that risk. Let's move on to tight end. One guy really stood out to me at tight end.
Well, actually, is there any?
Sorry, do you have another guy?
I don't know about you guys, but I mean, there are some more expensive receivers that I didn't talk about. I mean, first, Jettis. I think he's 8.6K. He hasn't had a receiving touchdown since week 1. I think it's worth a look. They're playing Washington. I think if you want a Kirk, Justin Jefferson, and then maybe even a Terry McLaurin bring back, because he has been good under Heineke, I think that's not bad. And it seems like it would be really expensive, but Kirk's not that expensive. Neither is Scary Terry. And I understand Jettis is a lot at 8.6, but just when he's on, nobody's like him. It's unreal. Yeah. He can put up 40 for you in a heartbeat. The other guy, T. Higgins, Jamar Chase is still out. He's only at 7.3. I just think he's such a screaming value against not a good Carolina secondary and a team who, I mean, they showed last week they can put up some points. Like that was against the Falcons, so maybe you leave it behind. But the Cincinnati defense looked bad last week against the Browns, which is not an electric passing offense. So if the Carolina can come in, put up some points, they might need to throw it. And T is definitely the number one receiver because he was not being targeted a ton, and he still ended up with, I think, like 13, 14 points with the touchdown. So I like that.
Yeah, I like.
Yeah, I also.
Oh, go ahead, Sam.
Well, I was just gonna say with expensive receivers, I had a Tyreek Waddle stack. I just want to hear your thoughts on that.
That's what I have this week as my main lineup. So I love
Perfect.
it.
Okay.
I like the top 3 price wide receivers. I just like all of them. I like Cup, Jefferson, and Hill. And so I think paying up for any of them, I don't think you can really go wrong. Cooper Cup, I mean, he's just a target monster. I understand the ankle, but we'll get more news later. We'll see if that hinders him. I don't think it will. Shelby Face says he's going to be a go, and so I'm not worried. Obviously, Justin Jefferson. And if we're talking about the Miami game, I'd rather stack him with Tyreek Hill than I would with Jalen Waddle. If I'm just going to go one, I just think that he's just the better play for me. Unless you want to go Tua, Waddle, and Tyreek and just triple stack it, right? You can do that. But for me, if I'm going to do the Miami, I think I'll just do Hill, Tua, and bring it back with whomever on the other side, right? You could do Darnell Mooney, David Montgomery, whatever. And so I like, if we're paying up, I like all 3 of them. I like Cup, Jefferson, and Hill. And I'm not super enthralled with Diggs or Adams, but I do like Hopkins at 7-9 because I just like that game in general.
Fair enough. And Jake, you mentioned T. Higgins or Jamar Chase being out. That takes me to tight end, where the one tight end that really stood out to me, Hayden Hurst at 3,600. Burrow likes to target his tight. The two guys he really, he does target his tight end sometimes. And I feel like with Chase out, I feel like that's a really good bet for this week is Hayden Hurst at 3,600. I think that's great value right there. I believe he's in the top 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yeah, he's in the top 10 for value. So you're getting a pretty solid tight end against a pretty poor defense in Carolina. I like it. I like not T. Higgins, Hayden Hurst this week as my tight end. You could also see guys like there's other guys. Gerald Everett could work out. Zach Ertz. Seahawks have that. I think Zach Ertz is going to be too chalky for me, which is why I'm avoiding him. Going up against Seattle again could be a high scoring game. 30-second defense. If that busts, then you're kind of going to be screwed. I want a more low owned guy than that, and I don't think Hayden Hurst will be as chalky. So that's going to be my tight end for this week.
I would say that for me, I think Robert Tonyan is probably. I like Aaron Rodgers. I know I didn't talk about it, but I do like Aaron Rodgers going against Detroit in a dome. So I do like Robert Tonyan. And you brought up Romeo Dobbs. I also like Dobbs. I like Rodgers this week, and you could bring it back with the Monra or something like that. So I think Robert Tonyan. But also Brock Wright. He's the backup for Detroit after TJ Hawkinson got injured. He's 2.5K. Like, you could just put him in if he gets 3 receptions for 20 yards or something like that. It's fine. I mean, it's probably not enough to take down a GPP of 207,000 people. But I think for value, 2.5K tight end, he gets into the end zone. That's great, right? That he hits value immediately. Also, Tyler Higbee at 3.7K. I understand he's had a couple bad games, but I still think he's the number 2 option on that offense. Allen Robinson is coming up, but I think when you're talking about tight end, it's kind of just a punt. And I'm not really trying to – there's really nowhere to pay up, right? The highest is 5.1K. And so there's really no wrong answer at tight end. But for me, I think I'm either going to go Tonyan or Higbee. But I also if you're going to do Marcus Mariota, I recommend pairing with Pitts because you just got to fill that tight end spot, which is just egregious.
Yeah, you guys mentioned a lot of them. Hayden Hurst, Kyle Pitts. I really like him. There's no big options, no Kelsey, no Andrews. And you can't play Hawk. So, you're kind of stuck getting some value. The other guy I really do like, another Jacksonville Jaguar, Evan Engram, 3.3K. He's getting consistent targets in this offense. And if they're going to be in and around the red zone a lot, which every team has so far, as a Raiders fan, I can attest, he's going to be a good play. And even if he doesn't, he's shown over the past few weeks that he can be a solid play without getting, he's only had 1 touchdown and it came this past week. And before that, he had 6 for 69, 5 for 40, 4 for 67, and then this week 4 for 55 and a touchdown. And at 3,300, that's way more than I would expect. So if he can get in the end zone, that's great. If he doesn't, I think he still has a solid enough floor to not ruin you in a tournament and to be very solid in cash.
Yeah, absolutely. I think all tight end picks are great this week, the guys that you mentioned. But yeah, I think overall it's great. Defense, I mean, I'm just going with cheapest one, Jets 2K. I don't really have any Bill stock this week, so might as well just do that. Cheap. I think that's the cheapest defense this year for DraftKings, actually.
Week 1 had a couple 2Ks.
Oh, really? Okay. Anyways, yeah, I think overall you're looking at a pretty good lineup. Defense will be a crapshoot, but let's do a consensus lineup. Trying to get DraftKings to load up. Again, I was.
Oh yeah. While you're doing that, the 3 defenses I had written down: high end Patriots. I think you just can't miss against, especially if Jonathan Taylor is out. I mean, they are a smash play. You're talking
not
about
to mention that the Colts fired their offensive coordinator today.
Yeah, it's a lot of chaos. So you're not on the revenge game thing that you were on with the Panthers when they played the Rams.
That got me off the revenge game thing, man. I'll tell you that.
The Bucks, the Rams are dealing with a paper offensive line. They are literally the best scoring team against defenses. So they're at 3K, and then the bottom one, the Panthers, 2.3K. Again, Cincinnati they've just given up so many sacks this year, and without Jamar Chase, maybe they can't figure it out again, similar to in the Browns game where kind of out of nowhere the Browns defense was the play in that showdown matchup. So those are the 3 that I'm really deciding between on any given, depending on how much salary I have left.
Yeah, the one defense that I like the Buccaneers defense at 3K going against the Rams. I mean, the Rams, they're just not that good. Defense is such a crapshoot, but I do think 3K is a little low to go for Tampa Bay defense. But like you said, the Patriots defense in an unbelievable great spot. And you could also go Panthers defense at 2.3K going against Cincinnati.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. 3 good defenses right there. Let's take a look at the consensus lineup right here. Starting off at quarterback, as we always do. We are all I feel like we were all kind of in agreement. At least Jake and I were with Trevor Lawrence. I forgot who you mentioned as the quarterback you wanted.
I like Geno, but Trevor Lawrence is fine.
Yeah, I'm cool with Geno or Trevor Lawrence. I think for stacking purposes, if we want to stack, then I would go Trevor Lawrence. I think that's a better stack I think it's a better, cheaper, and safer stack, in my opinion, than Geno Smith and
I don't know. The one thing I'll say with Lawrence is, and I already said this, but the running it back is really tough for me. I was looking, and it actually caused me to pivot my main lineup to Fields, just because you're looking at these Raiders players and you're like, if DA being at 8K is just so unattractive to me because of who's around him. It's just so tough to get up that high. And then Hunter Renfrow, Mac Hollins, and then tight end with Waller out. It's altogether a crapshoot. So, I mean, again, I do like Lawrence, but if you're looking into a big game stack, it's going to be tough because you're gonna get real ugly playing Lawrence and ETN and then no Raiders. It's kind of gross. But
I mean, we're kind of just betting on the Jaguars too. I thought that was the kind of the message we were getting. I don't really know if what the Raiders necessarily are going to do, but I think if that's the case, I know Jake, you were okay with Geno Smith. It seems like Julian and I want him. We could go. Yeah, I think Geno Smith would be a very solid option. I'm okay with Fields. I would prefer a game stack though with quarterback personally.
I mean, we could do.
I'm confused how Trevor Lawrence is a better game stack than Justin Fields. I don't really understand what you're saying.
Just like they have a better shot to put up more points, in my opinion. I know Fields will have more of the opportunities, but at the end of the day, it comes down to the points, and I think Jacksonville and Lawrence have the better shot to put up most of those points.
Okay, that's not what a game stack is, but
I never said it was okay. Well, a team stack, I guess, whatever you want to call it.
I'm fine with any of this. It's fine.
Yeah,
Julian, what do you want?
Oh, okay. I mean that for me, I think we should just go. We could also go. I like Aaron Rodgers this week, but we haven't really talked about him, so we don't have to go that way. But if you guys are deciding between the two, Chicago and Jacksonville, I mean, I'd probably go with Jacksonville just because Chicago's team implied total is 19.75 and Jacksonville's 23, and they're still the underdog and they're at home. So like I don't know. I think I would probably go Jacksonville.
All right,
Yeah,
we can do Jacksonville.
Yeah, and
Go
I
ahead.
know we don't do this a lot, but I'm okay going Josh Allen or one of the more expensive quarterbacks if we wanted to go to a Josh Allen, even Aaron Rodgers. I'm fine with that. Honestly, let's just put a quarterback in because I feel like we can build there's no quarterbacks that I really hate. So if we build a lineup out of any of them, that's fine.
Yeah, let's go Lawrence for now. I feel like if we go Lawrence, we should go ETN. I know we talked about
we
that.
can also go Zay Jones or whatever is the guy.
Yeah, Zay Jones at 4,100. That actually could be one of the better options to do. A very cheap stack right there. So let's is there a running back in particular, people? Like I know Eckler we talked about at 8,800. Are we willing to pay up for that?
I think at running back, I mean, like I'm fine going Eckler. I think Mixon and Walker and ETN are probably my favorite plays. We already did Lawrence, so maybe stay away from ETN. Just as much as I want it to be like Kamara and Dalton last week, that's so rare. So I'm okay with any of those guys.
I like Lawrence if we don't play ETN because ETN's gonna be really chalky. So if we go like Lawrence and Zay Jones and like who's their other wide receiver they got?
Christian Kirk.
Christian Kirk. And Travis Etienne busts and they do well. I mean that
would definitely allow us to access a guy like an Austin Eckler because tight end is so cheap this week that basically the only place to spend up then would be our last wide receiver spot and running back.
Yeah.
I feel that. So yeah, I'm cool with any of those guys. I know Jake, you mentioned Mixon. I think we could add him to the lineup and then maybe go with an Eckler.
Yeah, I'm okay with that.
Perfect. Let's do that. So Eckler, Mixon. We'll do that right there. Wide receiver. Do we want Zay Jones in this lineup? I feel like we should stack at quarterback if we're gonna stick with Trevor Lawrence.
I definitely want Christian Kirk if you guys. Yeah, and then whichever between Zay Jones or Marvin Jones is fine with me.
I'm cool. Yeah, I'm cool with Kirk. So 2 Jaguars wide receivers.
Yeah, I mean they're cheap.
Okay. That is true. So we can go. Yeah, we'll do Kirk, Zay
Jones.
Like
you really have to think with guys. Okay, it's so different playing a guy like Lamar Jackson or Justin Fields or Trey Lance to playing a guy like Trevor Lawrence or Geno Smith. For him to hit, he has to throw 4 touchdown passes, 5 touchdown passes. That's not going to go to one receiver. So if this is going to be that top 1% Millie Maker winning lineup because I'm assuming we're doing tournament, it needs to be a huge stack. You really got to push all the chips in.
Yeah.
That is true. So yeah, I think we're cool with that if we're going to go for that. I think Tyreek I think again, as we talked about, low owned, you could throw him in. We probably have another spot for a high end guy.
I say we go DeAndre Swift as one of our running backs.
Swift as a flex.
Swift because it's just like look at where Swift is priced. Go to Swift.
Yeah, I put him in at
6,400, and he's in between. Who is he in between again? In running backs,
he is in between. He is in between Leonard Fournette and ETN.
Yeah, so I think, he's in between Joe Mixon and Travis Etienne, and those two guys.
Oh, Mixon, I forgot. Yes,
so no one's going to be on Swift.
I think if we're going to do that, just looking at this lineup, I think maybe moving Swift up to Eckler's spot, and then maybe it's hard for me to put Tyreek in this lineup. And I know I talked about how gross DA is, but if you're running that game stack, You really got to have faith
Yeah.
that the Raiders are going to put up some points. And at the end of the day, DA does. I mean, he's had some pretty solid boom weeks. He's averaging 18 points a game after that 1-point performance last week. So, I mean, you're talking about when the Raiders offense puts up points, he puts up points.
I think right now, I think we should maybe go a different route than Lawrence. I'm kind of starting to see that now, if that's the route you guys are looking at.
Why? Lawrence is cheap. His he can stack them cheap. Bring him back.
Think you can get
why can't Devontae Adams do well? I mean, what's holding Devontae Adams?
I just think there's other guys besides Devontae. I don't necessarily think you have to put some Raiders in, and I don't think it's going to be a risky lineup. I guess you have to take risks to win.
Yeah, but you want variance in GPPs.
Yeah, you're playing too conservative. The game stack is trying to make it easier on yourself. You're picking one thing that could happen. Like this crazy game. What if 70 points are scored in this game? Who do you want?
Yeah, and the thing is, like, when you have to kind of really kind of go. You don't have to, but I like going all in because if you just pair a quarterback with a wide receiver, then go random spots the rest of the lineup, you're banking on so many different things happening that he hits, your stack hits, and then another 4 players hit. With this, you're just, okay, let's say that Jacksonville-Las Vegas game goes over. Who's going to do well? And hopefully ETN busts. He's chalk. Why can't ETN bust? Devontae Adams gets a couple touchdowns, and Lawrence and Zay Jones and Christian Kirk do well. There's no reason that can't happen. And if that does happen, not only does it help us, but it hurts other lineups that have Travis Etienne. And those lineups probably won't have any Zay Jones, Christian Kirk, Trevor Lawrence in them. And so we're going to be going up while they'll be going down. And is that probably going to happen? No. But if it does, you're going to go way up the leaderboard.
And those are the lineups. Those are the lineups that win. You know, like I feel like every week I bring up this game, but the Seattle Detroit game earlier in the season, where the winning lineup, I think it was DK, Lockett, Geno Smith, like DeAndre Swift, Rashad Penny, TJ Hawkinson. I don't think Swift was active actually, but Jamal Williams or something. I mean, it was like every single player was the play that week.
I told you guys to get Geno. Do you remember that? I said, let's go Geno. You guys were like, no, we can't go Geno.
I said an apology to Julian that week because of how well Julian.
Yeah, that was crazy.
But I mean, that's one where it's like, it was so easy. All you need to do was think that's what's going to happen. You know, it's so hard to just blindly pick the one player in each game who's going to get 3 touchdowns.
I guess. Yeah, okay, I'm okay. I would be okay with adding Devontae Adams in. I do still think we can keep Eckler in, though. I think we have enough.
Put in Swift. Put in Swift. If we're going to go leverage off of ETN.
Because I think right now, looking at – because you could put – oh, yeah, you have 3,400 for a tight end if you need someone.
If you're looking down like that, again, I think you could add in like a Foster Moreau. If Darren Waller is out, granted, because he had 6 catches last week on 9 targets.
He did, yes.
Wait, we're doing Jets defense against Buffalo.
I was just putting the cheapest defense in. I was just seeing the most realistic thing that could happen.
I think if you put Foster Moreau in, you can get to the Panthers defense, or maybe I think
you cannot get to the Panthers defense. We would have to take out. We would have to go down.
I think swap Swift with Eckler. I think that was the
okay. I'm cool with that. Yeah. So yeah, we can redo this thing.
Go Swift
in a sense. So yeah, we'll put Swift in. So now we have space for tight end, flex defense. Who
are we feeling?
I think if I keep scrolling down, could go with a
Kenneth Walker, but he's gonna be kind of chalky.
If the math lines up correctly, hang on.
I like Walker. I like Ramondre Stevenson, Tyler Boyd.
What about a Hopkins? And then you have 3,100 for a defense. That's half the defenses.
Okay.
Yeah, I like that.
Or we could go higher with a Jay Jettas if you want, or a Tyreek.
What could we get if we got Jettis? What could we get?
The highest defense you can get with Justin Jefferson
Oh,
is
I like
the
Panthers defense.
Panthers defense, even though we have Mixon in the lineup.
Who cares?
Yeah,
right. It's all good.
The way
all
the defense gets there is fluky TDs.
It is
stuff like that. It's not dominating another
I'm
team.
actually curious to see. Does anyone know who the highest scoring defense was last week? I think it might have been the Patriots, but
I don't know.
Might have been. Let me look. Patriots they only had 9 points last week.
No, it was the Saints against the Raiders, of course.
Right.
Oh,
less than 1% played.
Yeah. All right, I'm cool with this lineup.
It's just it's really mainly about like a matchup could be terrible, but let's say they get a couple fumble recoveries and they punt return for a touchdown. Like it's just fluke. It's all theirs.
Yeah, fair enough. I'm cool with this lineup. Are you guys cool with it?
Yeah,
I'm all good.
Awesome. So we will put that in. Trevor Lawrence, DeAndre Swift, Joe Mixon, Christian Kirk, Zay Jones, Devontae Adams, Foster Moreau, Justin Jefferson, and the Panthers defense. A huge game stack upcoming from that Carolina Las Vegas game. Should be a very fun week in the NFL. Shaking your head?
Carolina.
Or did I say Carolina, Las Vegas? Excuse me, Jacksonville, Las Vegas game. I was talking about the Panthers. I saw the Panthers down there. But anyways, that is going to do it for episode 9, week 9 of the DFS Dudes. Guys, it's going to be a fun week. A lot of teams on bye, so we'll have to see how other people balance the lineup. But I think we're looking solid for this week. If that game can hit, we are going to be in the green big time.
Yeah, I think so. This slate, honestly, it's pretty exciting. I think there's a lot of there's going to be a lot of chalky plays, and I'll be interested. I'd be excited if they didn't hit because last week was so chalky and it was almost disappointing because all the plays that I got excited for, even if they did hit, it was just like kind of a dud. Like Foster Moreau, I was so excited for, and he got 6 catches. It's great. 3,000? Like, are you kidding? But then it got so washed out by all the crazy 40-point weeks by the running backs that it was kind of demoralizing.
Yeah.
Fair enough. But that is going to do it for episode 9. Thank you guys all so much for tuning in. We appreciate your support each and every week. Jake, you know what to say.
As always, guys, there are many things a man can do with his life, and this is better than those things. Thanks.
See you guys. Have a great week.